Apple from the garden?
Yeah, it was delicious.
No. Mustn't do that. Forbidden fruit.
Oh, God, sorry,
I'm joking.
Oh.
Why are you doing that?
Most fans today know Alex Garland as the visionary filmmaker behind the modern sci-fi horrors Ex Machina and Annihilation. But Garland didn't begin his filmmaking journey as a writer-director, but as a novelist, publishing his first novel, The Beach, in 1996, which began a short-lived working relationship with director Danny Boyle, who adapted that into his film starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Although Garland wasn't thrilled with Danny Boyle's loose adaptation of his novel, they did go on to work together again, with Garland writing the screenplay for Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, as well as Boyle's 2007 movie Sunshine. Garland also wrote screenplays for 2010's Never Let Me Go, as well as 2012's Dread. An interesting fact about Dread is lead star Carl Urban says, "A huge part of the success of Dread is in fact to Alex Garland, and what a lot of people don't realize is that Alex Garland actually directed that movie." Seems to be that Garland stepped up to save that movie as Pete Travis lost control of the production. Either way, in between, Garland co-wrote the video game Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, but it wasn't until 2014 that Alex Garland made his official directorial debut with the surreal sci-fi horror film Ex Machina. 4 years later would come his next director effort, Annihilation, based on Jeff Vandermeer's 2014 novel. Then in 2018, he brought us Devs, an 8-part miniseries about the mysterious ongoings at a tech company. That brings us today to discuss his most recent film, Men. According to recent interviews, Alex Garland has been working on cracking this film for the better part of the last 15 years. This film was produced and distributed by A24, so you know shit's about to get weird, and Men certainly does. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome back. My name is Justin. Thanks for stopping by. Let's talk about a movie. In the aftermath of a personal tragedy, Harper retreats alone to the beautiful English countryside, hoping to find a place to heal. However, someone or something from the surrounding woods appears to be stalking her. What begins as simmering dread soon becomes a fully formed nightmare inhabited by her darkest memories and fears. So here we are again to talk about another weird, surreal, abstract, indecipherable A24 horror film, which seems to be my cup of tea these days. Now, I love these type of films, as many of you know, and in recent years, Alex Garland has emerged as a master of mixing surrealism, existentialism, symbolism, metaphor. Now, although Garland has touched on body horror before, a little bit in Ex Machina, definitely in Annihilation, but it's taken to another level with this film, with the final act, the final 15 minutes or so of this movie being unlike anything I've ever seen before, at least in this context. It's absolutely out of this world. Men takes the slow burn suspense of his previous films like Ex Machina and Annihilation, mixed with even a little bit of maybe Jordan Peele's Get Out, and mashes it up with this insane, grotesque body horror, the likes of Cronenberg and Brian Usna. There are going to be many, many ways that people choose to interpret this film, but I think most people will immediately recognize the overt biblical references, Adam and Eve, the forbidden fruit, all of those things are pretty apparent right on the face of the film, especially in the setup. But the film really lets the viewer decide which way they want to go as it sort of goes into Looneyville as the movie progresses or deteriorates into just complete madness. As far as the look of this film, Alex Garland has teamed up once again with his cinematographer Rob Hardy, who he's worked with on Ex Machina, Annihilation, and his miniseries Devs. Although Garland's films are steeped in this ominous dread, they always appear to have this surreal, dreamlike quality, very lush outside vegetation and bright, saturated colors. This film, in particular to those films, has this vignetted look where the edge of the frames are a little darker and it kind of forces you to look in the center of the frame. But every scene of this film is just immaculately framed to show off these just amazing locations. A lot of it is outdoors in this lush greenery, in the woods, or in this ancient, like 500-year-old house where Harper's staying in, or these beautiful old churches. I just can't get over how beautiful this film looked. Also, the performances in this movie, oh my God, are absolutely next level. This is one of those movies that only has a handful of cast members that we're focusing on. Most of the heavyweight goes to Jessie Buckley, who I last saw in Chernobyl. She is just tremendous. I haven't seen her in a lot of things, only Chernobyl, but she really shines in this. The way she floats in between happiness and contentness to being terrified or being angry, her performance is just so natural. But not to be left behind is Rory Kinnear, who plays pretty much every other character in this film. Although there are different characters, whether it be policemen or this weird guy that's lurking around the property or bar patrons, they all are different versions of Rory Kinnear's face. There's only 1 or 2 times when I felt I noticed the CGI, especially with a younger character that they try to put his face on. That's really the only time that it took me out of it. There's also a couple green screen moments that are a little sketchy. Not enough to take you completely out, but it is noticeable. But the seamless work that they did to make Rory Kinnear appear as all these different characters was just a really clever way to add a little bit of surrealism, a little bit of dread to this movie. Like any good slow burn, the movie begins making you feel warm and comfortable, at ease. But then as the minutes trickle down, the characters and stories start to reveal themselves as ominous and just sort of off. The audience is bit by bit unraveled and unnerved. But what I dug about this movie the most is that it is just absolutely impossible to guess or predict the ending. It's unguessable. Your suspense and curiosity builds to almost this unbearable level until we get to this honestly repulsive and indescribable ending. That does lead me to really my only critique. The ending is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, the ending is absolutely mind-blowing, but once it reveals itself, the mystery is gone, so it kind of lowers the rewatch suspense a bit, and it may also just be a bit too metaphorical and unclear for some audience members. I actually really wouldn't have minded a bit more grounded, a bit more sci-fi explanation to the end of the movie. I don't always need to be puzzled in movies like this. It can be kind of frustrating. I think a great sci-fi horror explanation would have served this movie a bit better, something a bit more grounded and clear, would have been more satisfying, especially for a wider audience, which I feel like this movie could have reached if it hadn't swung for the fences in such a bizarre way. It's also this type of film that makes filmmakers like Alex Garland and studios like A24 stand out from the rest of the pack, so I suppose that's also a good thing. Like I said, it's a blessing and a curse. I've been very vague with this because I don't want to spoil any plot details because this movie really is super original in the way that it tells its tale. But the story at its core is very simple. A woman tries to escape from a tragedy that is explained in the movie. She goes to a place to sort of relax and unwind, and the very place that's supposed to be this sanctuary for relaxation ends up being an absolute nightmare and something that the audience or our main character Harper could have never predicted and that she really didn't deserve. And like I said earlier, many people will interpret this movie in many different ways. There's lots of different ways to look at it. History and nature and the evolution of man and how they relate to women, how men and women relate to one another. And if you are into these movies, I think this will be a great companion piece, although he really swings for the fences and this is way more of an out there project than even movies like this, which are already out there. Man is on another level, but there's enough there to please horror fans with some great gore. A couple scenes of violence that really made me almost want to cover my eyes. It's just so slow and so in your face. But this movie's different. I definitely suggest going out and supporting films like Men, supporting studios like A24 because they don't make movies like this every day, and if they do, you often can't go to your local theater and watch them. So I definitely suggest going out to a theater and experiencing Alex Garland's new film Men. You won't be disappointed, or maybe you will be disappointed, but either way, it's going to be an experience that you won't forget. I promise that. If you have seen Men, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it. And I think we're done here, guys. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I will see you in the next one.